you for that warm reception. If you don't mind me saying so, I think vindication looks pretty good on me. But there is no time to celebrate. I sense a true uneasiness around our country right now. Here at home, we see layoffs by the thousands. We're concerned that the jobs for Americans aren't generating higher wages. More and more companies are suspending their plans for promotions and capital investment and growth. It bears a stark and concerning contrast to the roaring Trump economy, where we made things and produced things and were the envy of the world. And there seems to be no end in sight for the government-induced inflation that the Biden administration would want to visit upon all of us. And when we look to the world, it's not much different. We've got a president who stumbles up and down the stairs of Air Force One as his policies stumble across Europe. I think we had to spend 4 or 5 days asking the Chinese spy balloon what its pronouns were before we were willing to shoot it down. And so, in times of concern, throughout all of human history, people have looked to leaders for inspiration and courage and guidance. And increasingly, when Americans look to Washington, D.C., we see but husks of humans, vessels through which the foreign interests abroad and the special interests here at home operate. And so I am proud to stand before you as the only Republican in the United States Congress who refuses all donations from every lobbyist and political action committee. Their money is no good with me. I work for you and you alone. I am on a mission to change Washington, D.C., because Washington is a deeply corrupt place. You saw the work of that mission during the election of the Speaker earlier this year. And if you believed the mainstream media, we wanted crazy things. We were this wild group of radicals who actually thought we should have a few days to read legislation before we vote on it. We had extreme ideas, like the bills before our consideration should comport to a single subject, so that I wouldn't have to vote on the farm bill the same time I'm voting on war powers in Yemen. We thought we really could send a shock through the system with a requirement that the amendments to bills actually be germane to the subject area of the bill. We thought that bureaucrats who had turned against the American people should have their salaries singled out so we could vote against them. Imagine if we could have voted against the salary of Dr. Fauci years ago. What a better place America would have been. And instead of governing by omnibus, where our representatives have to look at some multi-thousand-page piece of legislation that spends $1.7 trillion, where you got to vote for the VA at the same time you're voting for the Department of Education, where you're having to vote for the equipment for our troops the same time you're voting for the woke policies of the Department of Labor. We will never legislate by omnibus again. We will individually consider the budgets of the agencies of our government and give them the thorough review that they deserve. But perhaps the most important concession that we received during that fight was the establishment of a special group of legislators to analyze the weaponization of this government against our people. Seems like every time I turn around, they're engaged in surveillance or list building or monitoring, and I don't care if it takes every second of our time and every ounce of our energy. We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel. And I don't think it's too much to ask. I really don't. And in this effort, I must update you on an important update. We have been taking whistleblower testimony from brave patriots, people who worked at the FBI and saw things like targeting Americans who attended school board meetings, like labeling people domestic extremists because they expressed support for building the wall or the Second Amendment online. We had FBI agents telling us that they were cooking the books, where there would be normally one case that you would open up on domestic extremism. You had the Washington field office putting pressure on agents to open up separate cases on each individual so that there would be the veneer, the illusion, the appearance that all of our fellow Americans, that our neighbors, were somehow extreme and trying to overthrow our government, when in fact that is not the case. And so we took the deposition of a brave patriot named Garrett O'Boyle, who served in the FBI, who shared with us these things. And yesterday, Judiciary Democrats put out a smear piece on him. They took really out of context portions of his testimony, and they tried to discredit what he shared with us as a whistleblower because he's a vaccine skeptic. And because when the FBI left him without pay and without the ability to earn other income, there were people who gave him a few $1,000s so that he was able to buy a winter coat for his children and be able to meet the month's bills. So we have an active case where we're working to corroborate this information, to build the evidence, and Democrats are obstructing the investigation. And so it is no longer time to go back to the old, low-energy, Paul Ryan, Trey Gowdy days of fake oversight. These are the Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz days. And if the Democrats are going to obstruct our investigation, then I am calling to remove the Democrats from our investigation. They shouldn't be allowed to sit in the depositions and hear the evidence if they are going to use that to try to get in the way of thorough, rigorous oversight. And I don't believe that means hearings where we yell at people. I think that means a fundamental reshaping of this government, a reshaping of this town. I know every time I give talks like this and meet with our great activists, I always get a question at some point where people say, do you still have hope? Can we even still save this thing, this great experiment? And I know we can. And here's what I would say. Even though at your job it may feel like you're outnumbered, sometimes, even in your social groups, it may feel like you can't wave your MAGA flag at full mast. But I saw what a group of parents did in Loudoun County who at first were outnumbered. I saw what pilots did at Southwest Airlines who stood up against the vaccine mandate. I saw what Navy SEALs did who got injunctions so that now we are in a position to, in a Republican House of Representatives, restore every one of our military patriots with their full rank and back pay. And all of you saw what 20 members of the House of Representatives did when we demanded change in a corrupt town. These are different times. They are new times. They call for boldness and patriotism. It is the honor of my life to fight alongside each and every one of you. Go to MattGaetz.com, join my fight, vote for Donald J. Trump in the CPAC straw poll, and let's go get them. Thank you.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to whatever we're going to do today. I figured I'll just go live and cover CPAC for a little bit. CPAC is live now. Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to 2 life sentences this morning, concurrent or consecutive, so he's never getting out. He refused to speak on his own behalf, and yeah, so it's been a relatively mild news morning. However, with that, I have been extremely busy over the course of the day. Extremely busy. Let me see. Did I do this right? Let's see. Yeah, almost. I had to kind of guess at the size because I deleted my template on accident. But whatever. I could fix that by going like so. Oh, wait, where's this? One of the big things that we're doing now, which you may not have known, is we've added 5-pound bags of coffee in most of your favorite flavors, 9 of them. So we got Wake Up America, Awake Not Woke, Flying High, Victory or Death, Fiery But Peaceful, French Vanilla, and a bunch of others as well. So you guys can get those orders in now. They're $89.99 for 5 pounds. So you end up saving roughly, what? I don't know. You save a lot. You save like $20 by buying the 5-pound bags. And they ship 3 to 4 days. That'll absolutely be the best roast you can do in the freshest. Because essentially what we're doing is when we get the order, we place it, and then it's roasted, and then we're shipping it right out to you. That's why it says 3 to 4 days for shipping for those. But to find that on the website, you can either do the link that's in the bio right there, or in the description, or in the video chat, or go to Pure Truth Coffee, choose the coffee tab, and then at the bottom you'll see 5-pound bags, and then you'll see all the ones we have. But today we're going to kind of do, they're just showing commercials on CPAC right now. But today we're going to try to do as much. I want to go full board with everything that we've been doing here with the coffee side. I want to build out the trailer. I want to do everything. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. I didn't see the bottom of this. That's screwy. I got to fix that. What do I do? Let me see. Let me take this one. Delete. Oops. Delete. This, delete. And then this one. Send down. And then we'll go this one. There. Let me go like this. And then download. CPAC is coming back on. Sorry. But yeah, I need to do as much. So I need to have a lot of sales today because I decided I want to get that super automatic coffee machine. That'll be like, that's the next step for us, is just rapidly expanding out. So that way we can open up locations in a town near you. So I need all of your support today. And it's, that's just by buying coffee, buying the patriotic boxes, buying the bags. I'm going to be live tonight as well. Sorry, I'm trying to fix something while I talk here. Did I fix it? I don't think so. There, I fixed it. But yeah, anyway, CPAC is back, so let's listen to them.
Word or acronym that's kind of come into the lexicon, ESG. I want to know, Andy, I want to start with you. You ran a big company, Carl's, or CKE, which includes Carl's Jr. and several other restaurants. When and why did this come into society?
Well, I would say good news for me. It came in about 2016, 2017 with any kind of force, because that was the year I retired, so I didn't really have to deal with it. But it really came in about then, right around the time of the Paris Climate Accord, where corporations started to get pressure from above, and above would be their shareholders, and in this case, companies like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, which are trillion-dollar private investment firms. They manage monies for pension funds, for state pension funds, private pension funds. They manage 401k plans. And literally BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard combined are the largest shareholder in 80% of the companies in the S&P 500. BlackRock alone would be the largest, first, second, or third largest shareholder in those companies. So they adopted this ESG, environmental, social, and governance policy, where you invest not based on a company's financial performance, but based on how well they are accomplishing these leftist progressive goals.
But just to be clear, it came from shareholders, not employees. That's where this largely got driven from?
Yeah, it started with these large investment firms shoving these policies down on the companies in which they invested. And if you're the CEO of a company, you answer to the board, and the board is elected by the shareholders. So they're all very conscious of what these large shareholders will do. This is, you know, they went after Exxon. They actually put 3 environmentalists on the board of Exxon. Within a few months, Exxon had a net zero carbon emissions policy. Now, does anybody out there think that Exxon having a net zero carbon emissions policy is in its financial interest or the interest of its shareholders? You know, you have to be an idiot to think that. Well, this is exactly what the left has been selling, and fairly effectively.
All right, so, Mr. Speaker, you're the longest-serving speaker in Oklahoma history, correct?
That's correct.
All right, that's the easy question. From your perspective, when did this come in to sort of the legislative process? About the same time? And was it the leftist legislators reacting the same way, or what drove them to sort of start to incorporate this into the legislative process, even in a state like Oklahoma?
We recognized this as an emerging problem last year and started developing legislation to protect our pensions in the state of Oklahoma in terms of the hard-earned money from state employees that has been tucked away for a retirement, and a retirement that they can actually live on. We looked at these ESG funds. They underperform the S&P 500, yet a lot of the pension monies are trying to be seized and directed to these underperforming funds, all based upon an ideology that we want to direct money to entities that support our social political agenda, which is not in the best interest of the beneficiaries of these pensions. And so we've started looking at the state level in terms of what can we do? How can we protect the citizens of our state? And how can we collaborate with other states across the country to put in safeguards to ensure that when it comes to investing the pension funds of the state, that we are seeking the highest return for those beneficiaries?
So let me kind of ask let me twist this the way I ask Andy on this. Do you think it's the legislators driving the train, or is it constituents telling the legislators that they want this done?
Right now, it's the legislature.
Right.
Legislators that have realized
and they're
the
responding
problem.
to the leftist activists.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
ESG is just purely political activism, and it undermines the financial returns and the focus of the fiduciary duty that all of our pension administrators have to seek out the highest return for the beneficiaries of the pensions.
So, Andy, I own a handful of stocks, right? And in the mail, I'll get an envelope every once in a while that tells me that the annual meeting's coming up. In years past, I've just thrown it away. I get it. I'm not going to the annual meeting. I really don't care. I own 5 shares of whatever company. Who cares? Should I check those boxes? Should I look through and see who what's being voted on and who the board of directors are, and maybe vote against some of them? Should I take an interest in that?
Yeah, everybody should take an interest in it. And there are organizations out there that will help direct you to how to vote for particular corporations. Because, you've got really thousands of corporations, and they have, everyone has probably 5 to 10 directors, and there will be shareholder resolutions. And the left is very good at framing shareholder resolutions so they sound like they're doing exactly the opposite of what they're doing. So you really do need guidance, and you need to be able to read these things carefully. But voting, how your shares are voted is important. If you have a financial advisor, tell your financial advisor you don't want these investment firms voting your shares. You want to vote your shares, because if you have a mutual fund or a 401k or an index fund investment like you invested in the S&P or something, these funds like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard are using your money to accomplish leftist political goals that you don't support.
That's right.
Which is the genius of ESG. They use other people's money to accomplish these progressive political and social agenda items. And that's something we can all work with our financial advisors to stop.
So speaking of investment and a lot of money, states invest a lot of money, right? I imagine the state of Oklahoma, your pension fund, et cetera, invests a lot of money. What is the state of Oklahoma doing to ensure that you guys are looking after it so that it's not going to ESG type funds?
We are specifically have crafted legislation that requires and defines what a fiduciary duty is. And we are confining that to the sole fiduciary duty is seeking out the highest return for the pension beneficiaries in the state. You have to take on your pensions in your state. Those can be trillions of dollars that we're talking about. Secondly, you have to take on the contracts and the vendors of the state in ensuring that whoever the state is doing business with, who they elect to do business with, in the executive, that their companies do not subscribe to ESG policies. That's very important in protecting and maximizing outcomes for the state. Thirdly, you have to also empower your executive branch to go after and root out these types of systematic political activism tactics by the left, which could be making sure you empower your attorney generals in your state, the governor of your state, to have full control over the executive branch of government. In the state of Oklahoma, 2 years ago, we passed House Bill 1236. I was happy and excited to champion that. But every member of my Republican caucus, and we do have an 80% supermajority Republican stronghold in the state of Oklahoma. We're proud of that. The same percentage in the Senate. Every statewide elected official in our state is held by a Republican. But we put in a mechanism to exercise our 10th Amendment rights as a state to push back against federal overreach and to authorize our Attorney General to constitutionally fight those things in the court. But we also thought about things into the future. If political power were to change in the state of Oklahoma, God forbid, but if we had an Attorney General that would not seek to push back against federal overreach, that there is a provision in that bill that the legislature could seek through vote of both chambers to go and engage its own attorney to push back on those federal overreach. So I think those are all very much things that the state has to focus on to get ahead of not just ESG, but these other types of overreach and mechanisms to try to grab power and force policy outside of the legislative process. The left is redefining the golden rule in this country. It has now become the man with the gold makes the rules. And Joe Biden wants to use your gold to make and implement his rules and his policy. And that is what we have to push back against at the state level.
So, Andy, the speaker brings up this fiduciary responsibility, right? This idea that they're supposed to be looking out for your best interest, seeking the highest return. So if you're an average investor, you're sometimes investing in maybe a mutual fund or whatever, what should we know? What should we look out for? And how do we push back?
Well, when I look, there's an organization called Second Vote where you can check on the political, they rate companies from 1 to 5, conservative to liberal to conservative. And I try and vote for companies that are 3, 4s, and 5s, which is neutral, leans right, and right. Mostly emphasizing companies that are 3s that are politically neutral, because my theory is that companies focused on profits will be more profitable than companies that don't.
Crazy.
It's kind of a
nuts.
crazy idea. But on the state legislative level, it's really wonderful what Oklahoma's doing. There are also Florida, Kentucky, West Virginia, a number of Republican states are passing legislation. There is model fiduciary duty legislation that the Heritage Foundation has out there and that the American Legislative Exchange Council has out there that make it very clear that if you're investing state funds, you're supposed to invest in the interest of the beneficiaries of those funds. And these bills specifically exclude ESG, environmental, social, or governance investing. And the more states pass that, the better off we're going to be.
Amen.
And Oklahoma is a leader in this area, and they should be very proud of what they've done.
I want to switch gears just a little bit with you, Speaker, because in the title of this is Soros. And one of the things that I find fascinating is over the last several cycles, George Soros has created this web where he has gone into state government, and whether it's secretaries of states, local attorneys, and started to help fund the elections of a lot of these organizations, a lot of these individuals. How pervasive is it really at the local and state level?
It's very pervasive, even for a really red state like Oklahoma, where there's really no chance to change the legislative dynamic currently because of such high supermajorities, or in the statewide. But just this past election cycle, we have seen an unprecedented amount of money coming in from the left to try to change those outcomes. And it's not just the election cycle that the leftist groups are trying to change the policy the way they want. In many states, the initiative petition mechanism through the state's constitution is being exploited, and to usher in questions that bypass the legislature's protection. In Oklahoma, once again, we have that supermajority that would stop all bad policy from directly through its legislatures and chambers. These groups are now seeking, with just a few $1 million, they can go out and collect the signatures to get items placed on the ballot before the people, and put a few more $1 million behind messaging that really deceives the people, and which we've seen a few things pass that we did not think could ever pass in our state. So there's a lot of money and a lot of tactics.
If it can pass in Oklahoma within 80%, then it can pass anywhere.
Absolutely. You know, anything that's run in any state that benefits children and education, that's the message that the far left will try to pass these initiative petition state questions by. And then it's in a very short time, the people of the state realize, wow, we were deceived, and we made a big mistake.
Andy, I want you to put your hat back on as a Fortune 500 CEO for a second. If you were running a big company today, how would the operation of a George Soros influence your decision-making today, right? So would the petitions of outside groups, of employees, like what would be influencing your decision-making or not?
Well, I probably run my company a little differently than most people do today. I don't think you should be turning over the operations to your employees. They work for you. You don't work for them. Soros figured out that the real action today is at the state level, and that's hard for some people to understand because you always think it's at the federal level. But with the current situation where the Republicans have the House, the Democrats have the Senate, you really can't get much done legislatively. I mean, the real things that are getting done legislatively that will have an impact on lives will happen at the state level, and then when Republicans get back in power, they can work their way up to the federal level. And you control a lot. You know, if George Soros had been had thought ahead back in 2000, then I don't know that George Bush would have won the election back in 2000. We might have ended up with a President Al Gore for 4 years or so. So he's not a good person, and we shouldn't say bad things about people, but I can think of a lot of things I'd like to say about him. But he's not a stupid person either, and he's got a lot of money. And what he's done has been very insidious and very effective. Now, if you're running a corporation, you're more concerned about your customers and your shareholders. That's who you really focus on. Well, if you're dealing with employees, or you're dealing with these outside forces, you're trying to do whatever you can to make them think you're doing, what they want you to do. But you've really got to be concerned with your board, your shareholders, and your customers. So as customers, everybody in this room can have a tremendous impact, and not just by stopping. In other words, if for example, AT&T drops Newsmax,
they did.
Yeah, right. Don't just cancel DirecTV. Call AT&T and tell them why you're canceling. You've got to get out. You have to make what you're doing known. It isn't just enough to say, I'm going to stop buying this. I'm not going to buy Coke anymore because it's woke. I'm going to buy Diet Dr. Pepper, which is better, by the way. I'm not going to buy Coke. But let Coke know why you're doing this, because that's what will impact their action.
I want to pick up on that, because I believe in the last 12 months in particular, the right and people in this room in particular who have been super active, we've gotten some wins. We've actually gotten some wins on the board when we've stood up and said no. They can't just roll over us anymore. And I guess the question is, what do you think, Speaker, has changed? Do you think that we're organized better, that there are groups that are, do you think we've just had enough? What is it? But I feel empowered more than ever before.
I think people are just fed up with the current administration in Washington, and they're looking for states to take action. And we are a republic.
Who do you listen to? I mean, I'm always amazed when you talk to a politician. What comes into your phones, your email? What DMs do you get? What do you go? Okay, I've got a problem, or I'm doing well.
It comes. It's for us in the House of Representatives. We listen to the people that elect us in Oklahoma. We carry the priorities to our legislative session. Our legislative session is only 4 months every year. But it's a collaboration between the other conservative states in the union too. My relationship with, let's say, Speaker Cameron Sexton in Tennessee, it's great to be able to pick up the phone, collaborate and exchange. Hey, how is this affecting your state? What are you seeing? And build a coalition to move this type of pieces of legislation through to protect the people of our states. So it's a multi-faceted issue, and we have to be motivated and inspired to really not only just focus on our state to get it right, but to work with these other states to help them. And coming with ESG, we have been working to come up with model legislation. And Andrew, thank you for your input. And Senator Braun was here yesterday. I appreciate his involvement in championing this issue in this bill that we saw go through both the Senate and the House this week in Washington on this Department of Labor rule. We have to fight this at all levels, but in the state of Oklahoma, we have no one to blame but Republicans for not getting things done. So we are highly motivated. Every day we were in session working for the people.
Yeah. Andy, you touched on cancel culture a little. Let me ask you this. From a conservative standpoint, you look at a company like Disney that has gone like woke plus. What is your advice? I mean, you touched on it for a second. Don't just cancel call. But do you say to a parent, don't get Disney Plus, don't watch Disney movies, or do you just call Disney? I mean, what is it? Because how do we strike that balance between being active and protest?
Well, the more active you are, the more effective what you're doing. It's going to mean more. If you don't go to Disneyland or Disney World for a vacation, and it's because of their woke policies, call them and tell them that. If you just don't go, it'll have an effect, but it'll have a much more meaningful effect if you go there. And look, Disney's aware of this. I mean, you don't offend half your target market, and not realize what you're doing. I mean, they're aware that they've messed this up, and they've lost control now in Florida of the land in which Disney World stands. Thanks to Governor DeSantis, he deserves a round of applause. So they're aware that they've messed this up, but the more pressure you can put on them, the easier it makes the CEO to resist the internal culture. They've made so many changes that their culture has now changed. So when you're running that company, you want to make changes. You got to move. It's like moving the Titanic. It's not like turning a speedboat. You got to move. You got to turn the Titanic. And when you let them know that supports what they're doing, it makes it easier for them to do it.
And so. Do you guys think that when you mentioned talking to the Speaker of Tennessee, is there a collaboration among the states to say, hey, I know I've talked to a lot on my show with Jimmy Patronis in Florida. I mean, they've done a great job in Florida of pulling out of BlackRock and saying, we're not going to let BlackRock invest our funds. Is there collaboration among the states to saying, hey, we've had a win, look at what you guys can do?
Absolutely. And when 25 states in this country make a move like that, we send a very clear message, and that changes a dynamic. But you cannot, I don't want to underscore the fact of the point that Andrew's making also. It's the people of our country also. government can't do everything. They can't protect against everything. The people of this country have got to engage and act with your own money and make a protest vote by changing your business, whether that's Disney, whether it's the financial institution that you use, the investment company that you use. If you want to get people's attention, you have once again, the man with the goal makes the rules. Well, and ultimately, that's the people of this country.
I think about the instance of Goya Foods, when the CEO of Goya Foods went to see President Trump, and he said something positive, and they tried to cancel him. In fact, everyone went out and bought garbanzo beans just to buy them, and said, screw you, we're going to support, Goya and President Trump, and they were benefited. So, I mean, that's another example of going out and voting with our pocketbooks and showing that we'll stand up for principles. But yes. I think that gets back to this idea of we've got the ability to vote with our wallets, too, just as much as the left.
Yes.
And if we stand up and do the right thing, that happens, right? I mean, that's the takeaway.
And that's what I believe the far left is ultimately concerned and scared of.
Right.
The people of this country activating and making those decisions with their pocketbooks.
Andy?
Yeah, the left doesn't want a second economy, and that second economy would be an economy that's supported by conservatives. And you do start to see the widening out there now, where some companies are going left, some companies are going right. The ideal world would be a Milton Friedmanish kind of world, where everybody actually just focused on making profits, generating returns for investors, doing the kinds of things companies traditionally did. It's the change. It's that emphasis on this environmental, social, and governance investment criteria that's really had a terrible effect on our economy. I'll quote Joe Manchin. He said yesterday that ESG puts politics over the interests of 150 million retirees in this country. And Manchin isn't always right, but he was right yesterday.
Well, I want to thank you both for having this wonderful conversation. I think the big takeaway is, we've got power.
What's this guy's name that's speaking?
Let's
is
go out
that
there
Matt
and vote with our
Schlapp?
wallets. Let's have our voices heard.
Is it Matt Schlapp his knee?
Thank you for being a wonderful audience and being here.
Thanks, everybody.
Sean.
Anyway, thank you. By the way, I've got a great new book on fake news. I'll be signing it at 12 o'clock down in CPAC Central. I'll see you down there.
Oh, boy. This is boring me. This is boring. I want to watch Body Cam or something and have fun. I was thinking about doing a marathon stream. Oh, Sean Spicer. Okay, yeah. I was waiting to see if Greg Stitchfield was going to get up here and speak, and then I was going to be like, that's weird. You took COVID money for his trucking company when he's a millionaire. Pisses me off. But yeah, this thing is boring the shit out of me. It's like listening to rhinos repeat the same talking points that they always do. It sucks. But I know, a couple of you guys wanted me to do it, or to show it. But I was thinking tonight that I'll just go as late as I can in an effort to try to raise as much money as I can, because I need to just bro, I've been open now. My coffee shop has been open since 8 o'clock. It is now 11:16. Guess how many people have come in here? Granted, it's raining outside. Guess how many customers we've had, boys and girls? One. And it wasn't raining then. But now it's been raining ever since he came in. And now there's just nobody. I need to get in a more foot traffic location. And I need to offer more, instead of just free coffee. I got to offer more. Who's going to be speaking now? I don't know who these goofy goofballs are. These are all like rhinos. And you know what I'm surprised about? This CPAC it's not full. It's not full of people like they typically are. Normally, they have a lot more people. If you guys didn't know, I'm running a sale on the site where you could buy a 5-pound bag of our new coffee. So Wake Up America, Wake Not Woke, Flying High, all your favorite flavors now are available in 5 pounds, either ground or whole bean. But if you order 2 bags, you get to choose a free t-shirt. So just choose 2 5-pound bags of coffee and then go and choose whatever t-shirt you want. Once you add it to your cart, you're going to notice that the t-shirt is free. And we also added 4 different cold brew that are under the cold brew tab. So you could check that And it's the Awake Not Woke, Frank01, French Vanilla, and Flying High that are all available in cold brew now as well. But yeah. You want to listen to this stuff?
The average American is concerned about is China taking over the world. Every American was watching those balloons go over. They're angry that China's buying farmland. But what we're finding out is part of what the Biden family influence peddling involved was the Biden family were trying to work with China to get their foot in the door on the American energy industry, to try to help them not only buy liquefied natural gas, but also to buy ownership in the drillers. So this is an instance where our energy industry is a significant threat to our national security. And who was helping China navigate the federal bureaucracy? The Biden family. So we need to try to get to the bottom of this. And I think the American people deserve the truth. And at the end of the day, there will be a legislative fix. We're going to fix this to where there's a clear line as to what a family member can do with respect to a president of the United States as far as doing business overseas, and to increase the ethics and transparency laws to where this never happens again.
Molly, the chairman mentioned a threat to national security. How big a threat is it? And yeah, I mean, you've followed this story about as close as anybody I know, and for as long as anybody I know. How big a threat to national security? How deep in the Biden family does it go? We all know about Hunter. We know a little bit about Joe. What else is there to dig into?
Right. People are familiar with some of Hunter Biden's business dealings, but I don't know if they understand how much the entire Biden family has been involved in this pay-to-play operation for many, many years. So it's not just Hunter. It's also most prominently Joe's brother, James, who's been involved in he's been investigated as well for some of the pay-to-play schemes that he's been involved with, or alleged pay-to-play schemes. But also other family members, nieces, and it goes beyond that. The reason why it's interesting is precisely for what Chairman Comer said. The way that the Biden family has made money is by collecting funds from foreign governments or oligarchs, compromised people, in exchange for favors to be named later. This, of course, affects the American people. And it happens to be that a lot of their business has been in China and in Ukraine and other places where we have every right to know exactly what was traded, exactly what was going on, and how it has affected American national security.
Mr. Chairman, so she's laid out that this is pretty extensive within the greater Biden family. Are you going to be issuing subpoenas on all those various members?
The guy's wearing a Ukrainian flag, dude. He could give two fucks about this country, too. Are you fucking kidding me, bro? Fuck these people. The dude's wearing a Ukrainian flag, a U.S. Ukrainian flag, as he's sitting at CPAC talking about all this stuff. I'd be in the crowd yelling, hey, do you believe in giving all of our taxpayer dollars to Ukraine? I'd be yelling it at the top of my lungs. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Some cooperation from some of the people involved in the influence peddling.
Molly, let's stay on that theme for just a little bit. When everybody's going to laugh at this, I know they are. When Joe Biden was campaigning, he said that he never talked to Hunter Biden about any of this China business. We find that curious now, and especially, a guy named Tony Bobolinsky, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He kind of blew the whistle on that. But we haven't seen much of Bobolinsky since then. Are we going to see him again? Should we see him again?
Well, if we could just revisit this, too. We had, from the 2015 to the current moment, an absolute paranoid conspiracy theory that the Trump family had engaged with Russia and had stolen the 2016 election. This was a widely held conspiracy theory. And if you recall, the Trump family actually was engaged in global business, like legitimate global business. It would not have been that crazy if they'd had involvement with Russian interests. Then you have the Biden family, which has no legitimate business interests in all these foreign countries. You have Joe Biden saying, not just that he never talked to Hunter about China, but that he never talked about his China business, but that he never talked about the Hunter Biden business at all. You had an eyewitness account, Tony Bobolinsky, saying, well, that's not true because I personally spoke with Joe Biden about this. But you have all sorts of other evidence as well. You have meetings between Hunter Biden affiliates in Ukraine with Joe Biden during the vice presidency. You also have interesting stuff coming out with the classified documents scandal. So the classified documents, which in Joe Biden's case he's mishandled going back to his time as a senator, involve a lot of things that almost read like they would be bulletins of interest to someone who is trying to do a pay-for-play type operation. So all of these things are really important. I also want to say the reason why this investigation is so important is that the Department of Justice should have been investigating this. And they, in fact, had been investigating some of this. But because of our politicized Department of Justice, they shut down investigations. They did not help with these investigations that were looking into different aspects of the Biden family business. The current U.S. attorney looking into it is highly understaffed, and he's operating out of a very small office that doesn't have the resources necessary. And even though there's a conflict of interest, Merrick Garland has not named a special counsel, which is in complete violation of rules there. So what's being investigated is very important.
Quick follow-up to both of you. How far back in the president's career does this go? He's been in D.C. almost since Lincoln. A long, long time. So how far back does this go? Molly?
I just want to say that there are so many, we have an overclassification problem in this country, particularly, it's not so surprising that you've had Biden, Trump, and Pence all brought up with this classified document issue. It happens. The fact that some of these classified documents that Joe Biden is accused of mishandling date to the Senate has kind of shocked the town. Because whereas these type of information is kind of flowing all the time in the executive branch, you actually kind of have to work hard to mishandle documents when you're in Congress. And some of them do date to his time as a senator.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Right now, today, we're going from today all the way back to Burisma. We're trying to focus on that. There's enough information there. I think the American people are going to get a good taste of what the Biden family business is about. And what Molly said is exactly right. The Democrats like to compare to what Trump did. Trump and Kushner, they have legitimate businesses. I know what their businesses are. They own real estate. They own golf courses. They own apartment complexes. They have employees. What's the Biden business? They don't own anything. They don't sell anything. They don't manufacture anything. What is the business?
Being the big guy.
The business is influence peddling. And there's a term for that. It's called being a foreign agent. So one of the things the Department of Justice could have already indicted, it looks to me like it's pretty clear that Hunter Biden and possibly the president's brother were essentially foreign agents, which they weren't registered, and there should be ethics laws that say immediate family members can't be foreign agents for foreign countries. So, they don't have a legitimate business, but they were getting paid excessive amounts of money from some of the worst countries on the world. If there's any bipartisan agreement on putting sanctions on certain countries, I guarantee you those countries are where the Biden family were profiting.
Stay on this topic for a little bit. If you can expand on what you've already requested in the way of documents and evidence, please tell us. And if I understand some of the news reports right, the U.S. Treasury, disappointingly, but maybe not surprisingly, is stonewalling you a little bit, given the Heisman on what's called suspicious activity reports.
Yeah.
What's that about, and can you break the logjam?
Well, I have a banking background, and suspicious activity reports, or SARs, are things hardly no American will ever get. And the Biden family has at least 150, and I believe more, from, it looks like, around 13 different banks. Since September the 11th, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee or the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee has had access to these suspicious activity reports. That would be under President Bush, under President Obama, and under President Trump. When Joe Biden became president, he snuck in right at the very beginning and did what's called a rule change, not an executive order, but a rule change. He changed rules to where chairman of those committees couldn't have access to suspicious activity reports. Now, why would he do that? No, most members of Congress didn't know what a suspicious activity report was at the time, and no member of Congress knew that the Biden family had so many. So he's clearly trying to hide evidence of potential wrongdoing. I mean, his family has over 150 of these. I was a director of a bank.
150?
Over 150. When a suspicious activity report is the bank notifying the Treasury Department that we believe our client could have potentially committed a crime. Now, no bank wants to issue those because when you do, you are inviting the bank examiners into the bank. I was a director of a bank for a long time. The last thing you want are the bank examiners in the bank any more than they already are. You're not going to issue one of those on a good customer. You're certainly not going to issue one on the son of the President of the United States or the brother of the Vice President of the United States unless you're pretty certain potential wrongdoing occurred.
Yeah, I spent a number of years in banking too, so I know exactly what a SARS is, and you're right, 150 to one family. I've never heard anything even close to that.
Never. That's probably a record, and I'm being serious. I've talked to...
Not a good record to have either.
No, not a good record.
My goodness. It's incredible. I had no idea. Molly, there's been a lot of focus, of course, on the famous laptop, the laptop from hell. And I'm guessing that Chairman Comer, as well as the Judiciary Committee, are going to be digging into that. What are the substantive charges that might come out of that part of this whole scandal?
There's so many different interesting things about the possession of the laptop. First and foremost, I think the fact that when it was discovered, we had big tech and big media conspiring, colluding to suppress open discussion of this, interfering in a U.S. election. That is a major issue. But the laptop, obviously, for those who have suffered through seeing some of it, there's a lot there. And a lot of it is salacious and not probably relevant to your investigation. But a lot of it just deals with the actual business dealings that Hunter Biden was engaged in over the course of many years. And so it is important that the oversight is being done on this, also because while the FBI had possession of this, they were not apparently sharing it with some of the arms throughout the Justice Department that were doing investigations into the Biden family business. They seem to be protecting the laptop from being open to examination. And so the laptop gets a lot of news because of the salacious stuff. But what's really important, and what's important for the American people, is how are U.S. interests compromised by having powerful families in bed with China. We know so much about how the Biden family has made so much money through China. Is that the reason why we are not doing what we should be doing to take them on as the threat that they are? And it's not just the Biden family, by the way. It's other important families in D.C. that make so much money from the communist Chinese government that they're unwilling to do what we need to do in taking them on. Things that never would have happened when we were engaged in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, where it was all hands on deck. We are in a society right now where we have Hollywood and the media and our most powerful politicians in both parties actually working with China and making so much money off China that it's a national security problem. And I'd say first and foremost is the Biden family, which, they've been involved for a long time. They've made a ton of money this way, and it's reflected in how Biden has spoken very softly about China, how he seems to have not been aggressive in countering the threats that they pose, whether economic or military. And there's no question that voters have every right to know what's going on here.
I want to ask the same question to both of you, and this is a very personal question, but I bet it's one that everybody watching here has as well. With the closeness that we already know that the Biden family has had with China specifically, has China got the goods on them? Have they got their hand on a lever to exert that influence? I mean, isn't that what this is really all about?
That's what our investigation's all about. And make no mistake, this is an investigation of Joe Biden. And to determine whether or not Joe Biden, first of all, lied to the American people. I think we're going to be all right on that answer. But secondly, is Joe Biden compromised because of the millions of dollars that his family received? Not just the money directly sent to an LLC, which served as a pass-through to Hunter and to Jim Biden, but also to the University of Delaware and the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, Biden the 4 years he wasn't in office, you know, he drew a salary from an entity that was, by all accounts, funded through China. So when you ask when President Biden met with President Xi several months ago, why didn't he bring up the origination of COVID-19? You know, why did they let the balloon fly over? Why are they continuing to let China manipulate our currency and get away with secret talks with Russia and trying to be the player on the world stage? Is it because he's compromised? And that's what the purpose of this investigation is. That's why it's of the utmost importance to our national security to determine whether or not this president's compromised.
Molly, you want a piece of that?
I'll just also say it's not just China. I mean, there was a previous Senate investigation into the Biden family business that did have access to some of these Treasury documents. They showed that the Bidens were receiving money from Ukrainian interests, Russian interests, oligarchs throughout the world. And it's not just that we're not doing what we need to do to take on China. It's also that the Biden family has been just intimately involved with Ukrainian interests. And unfortunately, Ukraine has a massive corruption problem. And so some of the focus there, it relates to China in the sense that how we are waging this war in Ukraine is drawing Russia and China closer together. But it's bigger and broader and on a much more global scale than just China.
Mr. Chairman, so far, I mean, you're into this thing pretty deeply, I can tell already. What's maybe the biggest piece or several pieces of information that maybe the general public isn't aware of that you've already uncovered?
I think, first of all, the thing that struck me is how much money the Bidens got from China. It's more than what's been previously reported. And the fact that it's pretty clear that Joe Biden was involved. And that's what the Democrats have said. When we won the House, we flipped the House, we went back to Washington for a lame duck session. Jim Jordan and I had a press conference because Jordan's on the Oversight Committee too. We had a press conference to announce we were going to formally start this investigation in January when I became chairman and had subpoena power. And the press said, oh, this is Russian disinformation. There's nothing in the laptop. You know, there's nothing to see here or whatever. Today, just a few months later, now the press is acknowledging, just like the Twitter executives did in our first hearing, that the laptop was real. They made a mistake suppressing it. Now Jordan's going to talk to those 51 intelligence commissioners and let them explain why they signed that letter saying the laptop was Russian disinformation. But the press is now saying, well, yeah, Hunter Biden, he probably did some bad things. But look, he had a drug problem, and Joe Biden wasn't involved. Now, the first part of their explanation is right. The second part, it looks like Joe Biden was very involved because Joe Biden claims he never met with any of these people. I mean, some of them flew on Air Force Two with Joe Biden when he was vice president.
There are pictures of him
There are
having
pictures,
dinner.
there are emails, and we've spoken. We have met with people that were in the room with Joe Biden when these business deals with his son were being involved.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
Molly, again, you've acknowledging that you've dug into this thing pretty deeply yourself, and thank you for doing it. What surprises might still await both the chairman, the committee, and the rest of us in this investigation as it unfolds?
I don't know exactly, but I think one thing that's interesting is there's such a broad nature of criminal allegations, and we seem to get an indication months ago through leaks to the media that there were going to begin to be some charges against Hunter Biden. I mean, he's done things that if you or I had done them, we would already be in prison, like on gun charges alone. But they didn't do it before the election, which kind of makes sense because you don't want to meddle. Well, it would make sense if there was any consistency in our Department of Justice on that. But if they were legitimate and if they weren't corrupt, it would, and if they were consistent in how they did this, not doing things before the election would be understandable. But now here we are months later, and we still haven't heard. So I think we might be interested in what it is they're going to do there. And I do think people would be surprised by the breadth of influence peddling that was going on, and just things that we maybe already know but haven't gotten enough attention. Like I always think about that $80,000 diamond that was given from a Red China affiliated person to Hunter Biden, which we learned about because of like divorce paperwork. What are you expecting to get in response, in return for that kind of gift? And that's just like the kind of stuff that we happen to know about. There's so much more that we have yet to learn.
You mentioned big tech a little bit ago, and I should have followed up probably right there, but let me ask now, both of you, big tech's role in at least trying to keep the blankets on the bed, keep this covered up for as long as they could. That's obviously going to be part of the investigation. Can we hold them accountable too?
It's such a massive problem, the role that big tech has in suppressing freedom of speech and freedom of debate, and truly election meddling. There is no question that every American had the right to know what the Biden family business was doing and what it was involved in. And it wasn't just that most members of the media did nothing to investigate it. It's when one brave newspaper, the New York Post, did get the goods on this and began reporting it. There was this concerted effort, a conspiracy, a collusion to shut this down, and many people should be held accountable. I don't actually know exactly what that means, but people need to stop giving propaganda press legitimacy. They are actively harming the country. They do not have the right to harm us in this way. And so I think that people who are victims of this should stop giving them any legitimacy whatsoever. Something needs to be done about big tech. And frankly, the typical conservative response is insufficient. Typically, conservatives will say, there's nothing we can do about this destruction of the country because they're a private company. No, they're more like another country. They're more like another government. And they are so powerful, and they have such an outsized effect on our, on the freedom of our elections, on the security of our elections, on our ability to just be free people and debate the truth. Something must be done. And I sure hope your colleagues are going to wake up and realize that something really needs to be done there. And then another part of it is that we have all sorts of agencies who are involved in this conspiracy to suppress conservative debate and information. We've had some reporting recently about this Disinformation Inc. It's a global billionaire-funded operation to say that if you are the New York Times and you lie for years about the Russia collusion hoax, you're good media. And if you expose what the New York Times is doing, well, you can't be trusted. They give that information to advertisers and other people like like search engines, and it ends up being that the New York Times gets to grow and the conservative media is declining. We are in an information war, and it's being waged by government agencies. They are funding some of these things, and so that's another area that really needs to be taken on if we want to have even any hope of being a free people.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to add anything to this exposing that, I mean, at a minimum, it'd be nice if we knew the truth about big tech and the media's role in covering this up.
Well, that was part of the commitment to America, to hold big tech accountable. There are committees that are supposed to be doing that right now, energy and commerce primarily. They're looking at Section 230 and some of the other things that we've all talked about. I'll tell you what my committee's doing, the House Oversight Committee. We just passed, it was my bill, passed out a committee, the Protecting Speech from the Government Act. Basically, it prevents what the FBI was doing. Right now, the Hatch Act apparently didn't apply to social media activities. So we've expanded, this bill expands the Hatch Act that would prevent and allow us to hold FBI agents accountable. We didn't know until Elon Musk released the Twitter files that the FBI had a special unit of 50 people at least. They didn't have the authority to do it. They didn't have the funding to do it, but somehow they had 50 employees that did nothing but police social media. And they were policing social media against conservatives. They were censoring conservative speech. But we can't hold, there's a loophole in the law, apparently, that allowed them to do this. The government has no business in censoring speech, whether it be conservative speech or liberal speech. That's a First Amendment right. That's a violation of the First Amendment. The government shouldn't do that. This bill will make it not only illegal, but allow them to be prosecuted for that.
I want to be sure and ask you before you get away. We started CPAC yesterday morning with Chairman Schlapp and Chairman Jim Jordan from the Judiciary Committee talking about the investigation that he's undertaken. So knowing the both of you a little bit, I know that you've separated the turf a little bit, and you've got your responsibilities. He has his in judiciary. How have you divided that up? What should all of us expect from your...
What's going on, guys? Hey, I'm going to punch my computer if I keep listening to these fucking rhinos. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It's the same freaking talking points we hear all the time. These people don't care about us. I can't take the guy seriously. He's wearing a Ukrainian flag as he's sitting there talking. We're sending billions and billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in our taxpayer dollars to Ukraine so they can fight a war that we shouldn't even be involved in the first place. And then you have a former U.S. congressperson sitting there wearing a Ukrainian flag while holding... I just can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to lose my temper. So I'm not even going to live stream this anymore. I'm going to be live tonight at 8 o'clock, and I'm going to rant for probably several hours because I have just had it with the stupidity of everybody. I'm sitting here, and I'm literally stewing, getting pissed off the more and more I listen to it, realizing that they all suck. There's no other way to say it. They all suck. You could do investigations into Hunter Biden. They're not going to do anything. You could say, oh, you want to remove Section 230 protections because that'll stop big tech from censoring. The fuck? It'll actually do the opposite. Big tech will be forced to censor. Otherwise, they'll be held liable. Oh, God. So I'm going to go live tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern time for a Night Crew show, and it'll be a long one. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Go to Pure Truth Coffee. Buy something if you can, if you want to support us. And fuck these rhinos. Excuse my language, but seriously, like, they don't... I'm looking at all the different speeches they have scheduled for today. They're all stupid. They're all stupid. It's all the same propaganda. CRT, crime in Democrat cities, this and this, this and this. It's the same talking points, but there's never any solutions to actually how to do anything. There's never any solutions. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for the next 13 minutes and I'm going to close the store and I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat something because I'm starving. And then I'm just going to sit and watch television. And then I'm going to have talking points of what I'm going to talk about tonight. And while we're watching live on Patrol, and I'm just going to go live as long as I possibly can because I want to sell as much coffee as we can, as many products as we can. So that way I could step away from all this shit and just make a fucking patriotic coffee company that's way better than any other ones out there. And so that way we will have locations in your neck of the woods and you can come out and I'm going to create a 24/7 channel that's going to actually do real news. It's all that. Fuck all these guys. And I'm sorry for swearing, everybody, but seriously, I hate them. I hate all of these fake-ass politicians, these fake rhinos, these fake people that don't give a shit about us, that don't give a shit about you, that don't give a shit about me or my kids or their future. I hate them. I'm tired of listening to them. I will see all of you guys tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern time.